Hey guys, we're going to go take a little ride today to our church house because I thought it'd be kind of a cool place to have the video, and we're going to use this motorcycle here. And we're going to set the camera right up on there. We're going to see how it works out. We'll see how it works. Anyway, it's going to be a good episode, so stick around. It's going to be about agreements that we make every day with Satan without even knowing it.
Sweet! We're watching the Wizive show.
Well, that wasn't too bad a ride, I don't think. Now, that's the first time I ever did that, so we'll see actually how the video turns out once I have it edited and everything here. I think I might have had it turned a little bit to the side, I'm not sure. But anyway, it was kind of fun. Anyway, we're here at the church house, and I'm going to do the episode here, and we're going to talk about how to break agreements with Satan. A little bit how to break agreements with Satan, and how we kind of make agreements with Satan without even thinking about it, without even knowing that we're making agreements with him. Because every day we kind of make these agreements. Well, anyway, let me give you an example. Like we're inside the church house, and let's say for instance that, let's say every door was locked and there would be no way to get in this church house unless I opened the door. See, this would be my dominion. This would be like my castle or whatever, my fortified castle, and nobody could get in. Except if I open the door and let them in and let them have a hold into that part of this building. See, that's the same way that our spirit is. You think about it, our spirit is our own thing, it's our own dominion, it's who we are. And nobody can come in unless we open the door. See, it's the same thing when we become born again. It says, I stand at the door and knock. When Jesus says, I stand at the door and knock, but you don't. So when you open the door, I will come in and dine with you and you dine with me. And the simple thing is, we got to open the door first to let Jesus into our spirit. And the same thing happens with agreements that we make with Satan all the time. Now I'm going to sit myself down and we'll talk a little bit more about it, what I'm talking about here. Anyway, here's what I'm talking about. See, we make these every day, and every agreement that we make, every decision that we kind of make a little agreement with Satan, which means we open the door a little bit for Satan to have access to that part of our spirit. See, if this church here is our spirit, and it's fortified, nobody can come in except through the doors that we open. See, that's what Satan's looking for. He's looking for us to just crack it open a little bit so he can just get his foot in. So that when he gets his foot in, he can tell us a lie, and we can believe the lie. Now, last week, I'm sure you remember, if you watched the video, I talked about a big agreement that some people make about being gay, and how that gay is simply an agreement with Satan. An agreement with Satan is sin, and sin has consequences. So remember that. Remember that line. Let me say it again. Agreement with Satan is sin, and sin has consequences. And I've repeated that many times throughout my videos, and the reason I repeat it is because it's very important. It's something I learned to take back your life. Anyway, see, every decision, when you wake up in the morning, you decide it's going to be a good day, but then when something happens right early in the morning that just kind of sucks, and you're like, this day sucks. See, right there, when you did that, you just opened the door a little crack for Satan to put his foot in and tell you the lie that this day is going to suck. And because of that, the consequences of that sin, that's a sin. By the way, it's just a small one, but it's still a sin. It's still classified as sin. Just because you made a little small agreement with Satan that this day is going to suck. Is that from God or is that from Satan? That's from Satan. And so what happens? What's the consequences of that sin? Well, you have a kind of a sucky day. See, that's just a little example of how we sometimes, every day, we're making these small agreements with Satan, and we don't even think about it. Now, talk a little bit more about how we make agreements here. Let's see, what would be some good examples? Well, first of all, Satan likes to use traumatic experiences, or maybe what somebody says to you, or how somebody treats you, or whatever happens in life, he likes to use anything that happens in our life to try to get us to open the door, just to crack into our spirit and that part of our spirit, so he can get his foot in and he can tell us this lie. So he can have access to that part of our spirit and totally destroy that. When he comes in, he's going to totally destroy it. Like, for instance, when my dad died, that was a pretty traumatic experience. It was very traumatic. And the way I responded to that is what opened the door for Satan to come and tell me the lie that I'm not good enough. See, I responded to that in the way that was like, well, apparently God doesn't think I'm good enough to have a dad. Now, was that a lie from Satan or was that from God? That was from God. That was not from God. That was from Satan. So, right there, I made a little agreement with that. And I just read an article the other day. It was actually a friend that wrote this. She wrote on an article about how we cope with different things, like different situations that come up. Like if you're having a hard time having a relationship with your dad, this is an example she gave. And so what you do to cope with that, to fill that void that your spirit has without having that relationship with your dad, what you do is some people will, I'll go get a big jacked up pickup here, and people will think I'm significant because I have this pickup, and they'll look up to me. So this way, it'll fill that void, and I'll feel all right because I don't need my relationship with my dad anymore. And what happens, that's an agreement, that in itself right there is an agreement with Satan. Agreeing with Satan that this pickup truck is worth more than repairing my relationship with my dad, or this pickup truck will fill the void that my dad isn't filling right now. See, that's a lie from Satan. That's not from God. And when that happens, something like that happens. Like if you don't have a good relationship with your father, and whatever you're doing to cope with that, to fill that void, what happens like a month down the road, that thing that you use to fill that void, that pickup truck that I just talked about, that jacked up pickup truck, will become more important than the actual thing that you were using it to cope with. Like, for instance, the relationship with your dad. So that your pickup truck becomes more important than your relationship with dad. Now, what is that? That's a little bit off key, doesn't it? Don't you think? See, another thing I want to explain here is the thing called profanity. What do you think of when you think of profanity? You think of cuss words, right? Using God's name in vain. That is profanity. See, God has this level of what's important to him and what's not so important to him. What's important to him and what's not so important to him. Now, on the level of a pickup truck, how important do you think a pickup truck is to God? It's pretty down here. It's not really important. But how important is your relationship with your dad? It's pretty much up here. So when you switch around what's on God's list of what's important and what's not important, then that's profanity. Does that make sense? Like, for simple reason, God's name is very, very high on the list. It's very high importance, God's name. But people use it for a cuss word, which is very, very low on the list. That's why it's called profanity. I hope you understand that. And see, that's the same thing that we do a lot of times. We put something that's not important and put it in place of something that is important. And that is an agreement with Satan, and it is a sin, and sins have consequences. Now, last week we talked about how being gay is an agreement with Satan, and I'm sure you probably don't have that problem. You probably don't have some of those big agreements with Satan. Maybe you got rid of those. Hopefully, you got rid of those already. But the main point I want to bring out today is a simple thing that every day we probably make small agreements with Satan. They aren't very important. They're not very big on the list of God's list, but they're still agreements with Satan. And that little thing can ruin your day, it can ruin your life, just as simple as, when you decide this is going to be a bad day. And that's an agreement from Satan. God doesn't make any day a bad day. Every day is a good day. That's why having a good attitude is so important. How you respond to different things is why it's so important. If you get an argument with somebody, how do you respond to that? Do you get angry back? And if you do that, you're agreeing with Satan. It's because Satan is saying, well, to get angry back is the best way to go. That's not right. So you got to look at what's important to God. You got to look at, okay, is having a bad day, is that from God or is it from Satan? Well, it's from Satan. We know that. So we got to renounce it. We got to get rid of it. We got to like for instance, one day I was having this awful day, and it's pretty much made up in my mind. I wasn't going the way I wanted it to go. But in the middle of the day, I suddenly realized, I am having an awful day. Why am I having an awful day? And right then I decided, okay, I'm going to break this agreement with Satan, because it's an agreement with Satan that I'm having a bad day. And so I broke it down, I cut it off, renounced it, and a couple minutes later I was having a spectacular day. It was just a change of mind. It was an attitude thing. See, that's the main thing I think it is the simple thing that Satan wants to control your mind. God wants to guide your mind. Satan wants to control your mind. And so when you open the door for, if something happens, if somebody says something bad to you, or whatever it may be, if it's some traumatic, something doesn't go the way you want it to go, or whatever, and the way you respond to that, you open the door a little bit, Satan gets his foot in, and then you make an agreement with him, and then that agreement becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and soon that agreement is more important than the actual thing that you were coping with, and it's not good. So you need to all the time check in every decision that you make, see if is it glorifying God or is it glorifying Satan? Is Satan trying to control your mind, or are you letting God guide your mind? Because if you let God guide your mind and let God be the pilot of your mind, then stuff starts happening. Does that make sense? I hope I'm making sense here, and this is very, very important. Anyway, if I remember, I'll put below this video, I'll probably put the link to the article that my friend wrote. It's a very good article, by the way, about how we cope with things and how we make little agreements with Satan there without even really realizing it. And I do it all the time, and I just since I kind of read that article and since I've been thinking about it, I was like, you know what? There's so many times that I kind of have bad days because I'm making these agreements with Satan. And then because Satan knows I've already made an agreement to have a bad day one day, then he's going to try it again later. Even if I cut off that agreement, he's going to try again another day. And then before you know it, you're just going to have a slew of bad days all the time. Anyway, what are some things that you can think of? Like I gave the example of having a bad day, of making an agreement with Satan. If something bad goes wrong early in the day, you decide to make an agreement with him to have a bad day. I made that example. Now it's your turn. I want you to give me an example. Now, if you're watching this video, sit down and think about it. What are some things that you yourself are making these small little agreements with Satan? What are you using to cope with something? Or did somebody say something to you, curse you in some way? And when they cursed you and they said, "Well, you'll never make that. We'll never do good with that." And how did you react to that? Did you let that soak in? Did you open the door a little bit to Satan? Or did you close the door and not let Satan in at all and not let that affect you in any way? What are some things that you're struggling with? What are some things that you do every day that you don't really think about that you use to make these small little agreements with Satan, or you use to cope with something that's going wrong in your life? Put in the comment section below.
Okay guys, we're at WizIve goal number 45, and that is to stop those small agreements with Satan. Stop doing them. Start recognizing them and stop doing them. That's what I'm working on, and hopefully you can do the same thing. Anyway, Romans 1:25 is the verse that I have picked out for this, and that is, "For they exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever." Amen. Pretty much the main thing I want to point out is they exchange the truth of God for a lie. See, that's what we do every time we make an agreement with Satan. We exchange the biblical truth of God for a lie. Like, this day is awful, or I suck. Is that from God? Is that from the Bible? No, that's not from the truth of God. So stop exchanging those things for lies. That's a big thing. So stop it.
This is the part of the show that you've been waiting for. It's the biblical joke of the week, and it's probably going to be lame and a little bit of fun.
Okay, I found this joke online. Here's how it goes. On Sunday morning, the preacher brings in 4 covered jars with 1 live worm in each. In one he poured whiskey, in one he poured liquid chocolate, and in the third he poured cigarette smoke, and in the fourth one he threw in dirt. The result was nothing unusual. Worms in the first 3 jars died. He then looked at the congregation and said, "I don't have to tell much. I believe you have learned a clear lesson." Then he pointed at the little girl and asked, "Sweetheart, can you tell you what you have learned?" Without any hesitation, she said, "If you drink smoke and eat chocolate, you'll never have worms.
I need you to submit your biblical joke so that I can have it on the show. Now, how to do that? Well, you can either go to wizive.com and contact me, or you can go to YouTube and create a video response.
This whole riding the scooter to church thing and the motorcycle, let's call it a motorcycle, it sounds cooler. Church thing and everything has been the Wizive Show. And my name, as always, is Justin Miller. I hope you learned something today. If you didn't, let me know in the comment section below. Let me know what I can teach you, because I'm open to ideas. Anyway, you have a great day.